And during those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. This is Rev 96. This first one is untitled, but it is written by a user named Del2Fi. When I was 16, my family lived in the middle of nowhere in the desert outside Barstow, California. There wasn't much to do there, especially in the summer when it was too hot to go outside, except for in the early morning. But this one weekend, there was a small traveling circus fair thing passing through. My boyfriend at the time, Adam, took me to go see it. Actually, I took him, since I had a car and he didn't. It was mostly just a few magic tricks, some Willy cotton candy stands, and people dressed up in animal costumes. Not like at Disney World with the cute costumes. These were super creepy, like dirty animal pelts sewn together to fit a person. Anyway, we went, laughed at how bad it was, and then we grabbed some milkshakes, and I drove Adam back to his place just a few blocks from my house. A few hours later, Adam texts me, "Hey babe, what's up?" I said, "Not much. I'm going to read something." He said, "Okay, cool. What did you think of the guy dressed like Abraham Lincoln?" I said, "Who?" He said, "At the fair, there was a guy dressed like Abraham Lincoln. He was legit." I said, "LOL, I didn't see him." Adam said, "Too bad. He was pretty dope." I said, "Aw, you should have pointed him out to me." Adam said, "Well, maybe next time." At that point, my mom came in and was talking to me about something. I think it was about how I needed to start planning on what I would do in college. After a while, I finally got her to leave and looked at my phone. There were a few texts from Adam. First one said, "Babe, are you there? What's up? Sorry, didn't mean to bother you." I sent a reply back saying, "Sorry, Mom needed to talk to me. What are you up to?" After a few minutes, Adam said, "Hey, me and some friends went out to the bunker. We're having fun, you should come." The bunker was an abandoned Air Force site way out in the desert. There were some tunnels and stuff, and it was the go-to place for parties that you didn't want your parents to know about. It was just pretty secluded and far away, and easy to hide or get away if parents or police came out, which was rare, but it made it fun in a forbidden fruit kind of way. Adam and I had been there before, for small, tame parties, with friends before, so this invite wasn't too unusual. So I thought about it for a bit and realized I didn't really want to read or plan for college, so I texted him back that I would be there in 20 minutes. I told my mom I was going to Adam's place. Yeah, I might have stretched the truth. Nobody admitted to going to the bunker. And so I got in my car. I was driving toward the highway when I passed the block Adam lived on. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone waving and glanced over. I kept driving for a few seconds while my brain processed. Then I hit the brakes. I leaned out the window and looked back. Adam was walking toward my car. I stared at him until he got to the driver's door. Adam looked at me and said, "I thought you were staying home today. Anyway, I'm glad you came by. I was just heading over to your place. I can't find my phone and I was wondering if I might have left it in your car." This one is untitled and also with no author. When I was a Boy Scout, I got the filmmaking merit badge while at winter camp one year. In order to earn it, you have to complete a short film, no matter how terrible. It's luck of the draw, naturally, when it comes to who is in your merit badge class. But since we were in the woods, we decided a slasher flick would be a lot of fun. We wrote a script where a masked killer goes around stabbing people at a Boy Scout camp. We weren't the most creative geniuses or anything. So there was this kid named Paul in the group. He was pretty cool. Got along great with everyone. He was one of those guys who was just naturally likable. But we unanimously voted to make him play the killer because he had this really creepy Peter Lorre eye thing going on. He did great. Fake stabbing a bunch of victims and being menacing enough for a movie produced by 12 and 13-year-olds. We edited the thing. Buckets of fake blood, bad acting and all. And I forgot about it completely until 6 years later, when I was a freshman at college and recognized Paul walking between buildings. I jogged over. We made small talk about each other's spring break plans, since it was coming up in a week. And that was that. Not like we'd really kept in touch or anything. So fast forward a week, and I'm back at home watching the news when I see a report about a young man who's killed his mother, father, and 2 family dogs, and then lit their house on fire over the spring break. The police already had a suspect in custody, so the newscast flashed his picture, and sure enough, it was Paul. The next story is untitled, and there's no author available. In her early 20s, my mom managed a photography studio in the mall in Scarborough, Ontario. One day my mom is working alone and this guy comes and asking for a photo. But he's being a little weird about it, saying he needs a picture taken of his hip. He did a lot of injury photos for court cases, so my mom assumes this is what he needs and starts loading up the camera. When she looks up, he's got his pants totally off and he's exposing himself. My mom starts laughing hysterically and tells him to get out. She doesn't have time for this nonsense. About an hour later, a girl that was working at the denim store down the hall comes down to tell her about this pervert that took off his pants in the middle of the store, trying to expose himself to the female customers. They both have a laugh. He didn't seem at all menacing, just obviously not all there. 2 days later, the same girl comes running into my mom's studio, pale as a ghost. On the front page of the paper is a sketch of this guy, with the title, Scarborough Rapist. It's pretty crazy to think that she was that close to getting attacked by Paul Bernardo in the peak of his rapist crime spree. This next one is also untitled and unauthored. My Oma, which is grandmother in German, grew up in a small town called Weischlach, Germany, during the Holocaust and World War II. She rarely talks about that period of her life, but when we ask, she would say things like, "Yeah, I had friends who just disappeared, but we were raised not to ask questions." However, the most horrific story I heard was when she told me she was playing by a railroad track near her home with some friends. At one point, a large freight train came by. She heard what she thought to be scratching and screaming, but not those of an animal, because she had heard that many times before when the train had passed. This time it was different. So she ran home and asked her mom what that could have been or meant. She said that her mom just yelled at her to never ask questions like that again, and to stay away from the tracks and talk to no one. This next one is untitled, and there's no author given. Around 4 a.m., there was a call at the local fire station in Pensacola, Florida. When they heard an answer, they heard the screams of many people and the sound of crackling fire. The firemen yelled in astonishment for the person to tell them their location right away. They heard not just one person using the phone, but everyone they heard screaming before answering in unison. 1242 Westbrook Apartment Complex D. So the firefighters all rushed over and looked at astonishment as the apartment complex was completely unharmed. They took a precaution and evacuated everyone from the complex. Grumpy and groggy, the people living inside took their pets and children and waited outside. The firefighters did a clean run-through of the apartment. But before the chief firefighter was about to release the waiting owners, an explosion on the lower part of the complex occurred. Flames started appearing rapidly in all of the windows, and the apartment slowly began to turn to ash and cinders. Upon further inspection, they found a gas pipe had ruptured and was ignited by a water heater's flame. The firefighters were shocked when they saw what occurred and remembered the call. When they tried to contact the number again to thank the caller, they only received the following response.
"We're sorry. This number no longer exists. Perhaps you dialed a wrong number. Please hang up or try the number again. And thank you for saving them."
This next one was submitted by Lupita Castillo and is read by Anne from Caravan Library of Lore podcast.
Summer, after my freshman year, going into sophomore year, the marching band was taking a trip to Florida. It was going to be a week-long trip, and we were taking 4 charter buses there. It was a total drive of 25 hours. The night before, I suddenly had this horrible feeling about it. I didn't want to go anymore. I was anxious and dealing with depression at the time, so I chalked it up to that and ignored it. My mom even cried with me that night, but convinced me to go. The next morning, during roll call, we were double-checking which buses we needed to go on. I was on bus 1. My boyfriend at the time was on bus 2. So I asked a guy named Carlos Rodriguez to switch with me, and he did. Fast forward to when we get to Houston. We stop at Cece's Pizza to eat, then board the buses and head off. 5 minutes into the drive, bus 1 almost drives off a bridge. After 8 hours of driving, the drivers were required to switch off, but bus 1 and bus 2 didn't switch. We kept going anyways. We get to Mobile, Alabama, and bus 1 crashes with an 18-wheeler. 15 injuries. 1 guy in a coma. That guy was Carlos, the guy who switched with me. For a good 2 hours after the crash, no one was allowed to call home, not until we knew the exact plans. However, while all that was going on, my mom got a call back home. The caller ID read Rodriguez, same last name as the guy in a coma. She picked up and heard nothing but ambulances and screams. The next day, she called the number back, and it's an old lady. Her last name isn't Rodriguez, and she wasn't home the night before. We stay in Alabama for a day, then continue with our trip. When we get to Florida, our hotel is shitty. There was a huge bloodstain on my bed. My friend looked around the room and found a Bible with a bunch of satanic markings on it, along with a purple candle and a red pin and a black feather on it. Strange things happened there, such as waking up with scratch marks on our bodies, doors closing on us, the shower curtain being ripped open, and our phones shutting off the second we stepped into the room. We asked to be moved, but couldn't since all the other rooms were full. We went to Universal Studios, and a huge group of us decided to ride the rocket roller coaster together. The thing was 100% band kids. Well, it broke down, and we were stuck nearly upside down for a whole hour. Finally, the trip ended and we headed back home, 15 miles away from our town. Every single bus broke down at the same time. When they checked, every single tire was blown out as well. We waited 4 hours just to get replacement buses and couldn't have our parents pick us up due to being on the highway and it being a hazard or some shit like that. 6 weeks passed by and Carlos is still in a coma. We all pretty much moved on from our weird trip and didn't talk about it, especially my mom. The whole phone call thing really freaked her out. Well, one night we get a call. Caller ID says, Rodriguez. We stare at each other for a second, and then she answers. Nothing. The call hangs up, and we just ignore it. The next day, we find out Carlos finally woke up at 10:10 p.m., the same time the call came in.
This one has no author and is called The Blind Man's Favor. In Berlin, after World War II, money was short, supplies were tight, and it seemed like everyone was hungry. At the time, people were telling the tale of a young woman who saw a blind man picking his way through a crowd. The two started to talk. The man asked her for a favor. Could she deliver the letter to the address on the envelope? Well, it was on her way home, so she agreed. She started out to deliver the message when she turned around to see if there was anything else the blind man needed. But she spotted him hurrying through the crowd without his smoked glasses or white cane. She went to the police, who raided the address on the envelope, where they found heaps of human flesh for sale. And what was in the envelope? A note that said, "This is the last one I am sending you today." If you have a creepypasta or a ghost story that you'd like to share, send it to rev96pod@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Rev96Podcast and Instagram and Twitter under the same name.